Okay. We're back with the bad that we saw in Japan. I think there's one focal point we can both start on. We both talked about our lists, so I'm going to let you go at Lawson to start.
Yeah, Lawson. So, I mean, we talked at length about Lawson the last couple episodes, I think. And this one is not really any better. Obviously, his first race back at RB and did okay in the car in practice, kind of kept on pace with Isaac through FP1 through FP3. Not really anything impressive. He was behind Yuki in practice for the most part, which would be expected. If you consider that the Red Bull is a better car, which I'm not sure we can make that decision at this point. Um, and then people made a lot of the fact that he qualified one higher than Yuki. You know, we talked in the goods about Yuki's performance and why I think he didn't qualify so well. So I didn't really buy into it because that seemed like all there was for Lawson to qualify P13 or whatever it was. And this is coming from a guy who spent a year in Japan, and Super Formula only has, I think, four, maybe six tracks, and they repeat tracks. And I believe Suzuka is one that they do twice. So he should have enough experience around Suzuka to know how to drive that track properly. And to be in a reasonable car, which we saw with Isaac Hadjar was able to get to Q3 and not do it, doesn't speak well to Liam Lawson's future in F1, I think. And sure enough, during the race, we see him hold Yuki off for the first few corners, but inevitably Yuki slips by. And then Liam gets visited by the RB strategy fairy and immediately drops to the back and basically stays there the entire time with no hope in hell of ever moving forward, including a two-stop strategy in a clearly one-stop race where they put him on soft tires, and I'm pretty sure he went backwards with the soft tires on. So all around an abysmal race. We have 3 Grand Prix and 1 sprint in the books, and Lawson is at 0 points. All of his other teammates have points on the board.
Yep.
I think it's pretty clear he's now got, 15 races in F1, including a sprint this year. And he's not it. Again, one of these guys that might deserve to be in F1 had it not been for Red Bull ruining his career. But now I think he's firmly on the downhill slide. So maybe those comparisons to Karun Chandhok at the beginning of the year were more apt than we thought.
So I'll just say this. As everybody knows, I spent all of last year saying Mick Schumacher deserved another chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he did get those 9 races for Williams at the end of the year, and the first thing he did was crash or not score points, I would have to sit there and say, oh shit, he's done in F1. And the only reason I bring that up is to say this was the race for Liam to absolutely blow it out of the water and show us they got it wrong. And that Marco was right. We just, we mismanaged him, and we're doing this to save his career. But to be blown out of the water by Isaac Hadjar when you have ample experience, like you said, ample experience at this track, and to poop your pants, 13th is nothing to brag about in qualifying. Yeah. Yuki made a mistake. You didn't. And Isaac and Yuki showed they were in Q3 the other 2 races in that car. Or Yuki was, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So if you sat there, and this is something that really pissed me off before he got fired, even though we defended him last week because, this was unfair what Red Bull did to him. Let's keep that in mind. He should not be in this position. But
Absolutely.
but to sit here and afterwards say I'm not going to get fired because I beat Yuki in every junior program. Well, this would have been the time to back that up. Because from what I remember, you guys were never in the juniors together. I don't think, at least. But let's say they were. Yuki finished third in F2 in a season where Mick Schumacher, I don't think he ran away with it, but still, he won it. Yuki lost to someone who was supposed to be exceptional at the time. And Yuki did better than you at the junior team. What are you talking about? So this was your chance, and unfortunately, yeah, you really got to step it up from here. Otherwise, you're right. This downtrend, this is going to be a slow bleed out of F1. And he's got to be on sack watch from this point forward. So we'll just chalk it off to a bad race, crappy strategy. But it doesn't look good.
Sack watch might be an unfortunate term given his teammates' weekend, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just inadvertently making a lot of testicle jokes today, or testicle comments. My mind is not in the gutter, I promise, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, unfortunate, I guess we can say, but you said it best. You talk the talk, Liam. All winter. That's on you.
Yeah. And he doesn't have the excuse of having an unpredictable or hard to drive car anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other two drivers who have been in that car this year have both got into Q3. It seems hooked up. It looks really smooth, actually. It looks like one of the better handling cars out there. Might not be the quickest, but it looks like a decent car. And to qualify 13th and finish 18th or 17th, whatever the hell he was, that's extremely disappointing when your rookie teammate is up there in 8th place or whatever it was.
Yeah, and consistently there. Was at times fighting. Like, they had to pit him in a strategic way, Isaac Hadjar, to keep up with Lewis Hamilton. And they seriously thought he could do it. So yeah, that should have been you, Liam.
Fighting a 7-time world champion.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good segue into another rookie that you were going to talk about, unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, I think that's Liam for now. So we're talking about Doohan?
Yes.
Yeah. So I put it in the bad because he was unlucky. He lost out his FP1 spot to Ryo Hirakawa, who just very promptly after the Grand Prix decided he's up and leaving Alpine. So he's one of the really off topic for the moment, but Ryo Hirakawa was one of the recent signings for Alpine as a reserve driver. Got an FP1 seat, and then this morning announces that he's leaving Alpine to join Haas as a reserve driver.
Oh, no. Where's the Price is Right horn when you need one?
No, but wait for it, Nick. Where did Ryo Hirakawa spend most of his racing career?
Ooh, I like where this is going. I'm guessing Toyota.
He is a world endurance champion for Toyota Gazoo Racing.
Mm-hmm.
So he's won Le Mans 2 times, I think.
Oh, wow.
And he was in the car when Alonso was there as well. The 2 times they didn't win. But he has won that race twice himself. He is a champion in WEC with Toyota. To me, it makes sense that he joins Haas, especially if Toyota has an interest in entering with a serious, as a serious competitor.
Ooh, it's coming. I hope so.
Yeah, I really do too, but we'll see.
Anyways, back to Doohan.
So loses his FP1 slot. Doesn't have much experience here because F2 and F3 don't race here in Japan. So if anybody needed that spot, it would have been Doohan. Comes in FP2 and very promptly puts it into the wall at turn one. Extremely fast. Um, they said it was the 50 or 55G impact.
Ooh.
And 55G at a very shitty angle to hit that wall. Yeah, it's a tire wall. There's plenty of cushion there, but you could see it kind of went in sideways, and those cars are not meant to absorb that much impact sideways. All right. We've talked about it before where if you find yourself going into a wall, the best thing to do is to try and put it in backwards.
Mm.
And I don't blame him for that. I don't think there was any time to do anything, nor did he have the ability to control that. But the way it hit that wall was just absolutely nasty. And you could see it as he was trying to get out of the car. He was hurting.
Fuck.
So he was fine, relatively. Obviously not 100%. I'm not sure if you saw after the race, he struggled to get out of the car.
I just saw that a couple hours ago, yeah.
Yeah, so clearly not fine, but probably felt that he had to race and had to put on, that he was okay because of the pressure that's on him.
Mm.
So I think it was a shitty weekend for him because he only really got less than an hour in FP3 to get up to speed with that car. Didn't qualify well, didn't race well, but I mean, I can't blame him. He was probably in quite a bit of pain. Just to put it into perspective for you, Nick, if he weighs, what's their I think their minimum weight limit is like 155 pounds.
Something like that, yeah. I can hear the calculator.
He would have weighed he would have weighed 8,500 pounds going into that wall.
Holy shit.
At 55G.
Oh my God.
Up into those seatbelts.
Yeah, his shoulders, his chest, his back, hips, spine. Probably had a headache.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously they have protective gear and there are things built into those harnesses to minimize that load. But just as a very rough calculation, it's his weight times the acceleration. So that's a shit ton of force on the human body.
My God.
He definitely was not feeling great. It was actually fairly similar to what happened to Lance Stroll in Singapore a couple years ago. If you remember that one, which Lance didn't start the race.
Well, from my understanding, Doohan kept his hand on the DRS, unfortunately. It was just an unfortunate rookie mistake. Like he didn't close the DRS.
No?
No?
You don't... His hand wasn't on it. Going into turn one, you do have to manually kind of flick it off. The way it works is the DRS is automatic once you lift off a certain amount or hit the brakes. So turn one is not severe enough of a turn for them to lift off that much, and they typically don't brake going into there, so the DRS wouldn't be automatically disengaged. You do have to press the button to turn it off. But apparently what Doohan said was that he found a way in the simulator that he could go into turn one with DRS open. Basically trying to be the last of the late breakers, but in this case, the longest DRS time. Longest time without that extra aerodynamic load. And he tried to do it in real life, and it didn't quite go the way he planned.
No, not at all. So Stroll then, I guess, did the same thing then in Singapore a couple of years back.
No, Stroll got on the curb. There's no DRS where Stroll was in Singapore. I say it was like Stroll in Singapore in the sense that they crashed in a very similar way.
I see.
A very heavy side impact. Same sort of loading.
Yeah, but in that case, Daddy said, "Listen, son, just take the day off. You already did your damage quota for the weekend, sweetie, and we need to get ice cream on the way home. So That's what I think happened there. So,
Okay.
it's kind of stupid that Alpine didn't think that for a track that was new to Jack Doohan that they should have him in all 3 sessions. Like, that's just foolish.
Yeah.
That's very foolish. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, and I heard their excuse for it, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. They claim that there's a fundamental problem with the car, or they think that there might be a fundamental, let's say, inconsistency in the car. And Gasly felt that he was on top of it better than Doohan was. So wanted that extra time in practice to make sure he was on top of it.
Sure.
So that's why they decided to take Doohan out.
Mm-hmm.
But based on the results, I call bullshit because it didn't matter anyway.
Yes, and based on the fact that there's, well, 1 less now, but like 4 reserve drivers that can replace Doohan at any point in time, and they've already talked about replacing him a million times. And Ralph
had one at the track.
Exactly. So, yeah, we're not buying it. You've already lost faith in Doohan. You didn't give him the extra practice he needs. Just end this divorce already. Anyways, Ralph Schumacher's going off about it, saying apparently he's already been axed. They've already made up their mind. It's just, and Ralph's been on it this year apparently.
Ralph knows Flavio, right?
And Helmut Marko. But yeah.
What does Helmut have to do with it?
Oh, I'm just saying Ralph was the one who called Lawson being axed. He told everybody about the emergency meeting first. So yeah, if Ralph is now saying that about Doohan, he might be right, unfortunately. But yeah, this whole Doohan situation, like, you're setting him up to fail to justify replacing a driver you wanted all along. And I just hate this whole thing. It's not what he deserves. But anyway.
No, and I've said it before. I think he deserves at least half a season. But I think you're probably right. I don't think he's going to last much longer. I think that first 5 weekend situation is probably going to be it for him. Come Miami, we'll see somebody in that car.
You saw it in his father, Mick Doohan's eyes in Australia when he spun out the first lap. You saw it. There was like this sense of like, ooh, that was it. He was very, very shocked and hurt about that. You could see it in Mick's eyes. And yeah, I think he needed a big weekend then.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of first strike, only strike type deal.
Or just that if it was ever going to happen, it would have been at his home track. You needed a stay of execution somewhere where you're comfortable. You're not even comfortable where you're supposed to be comfortable. What does that say about the rest of the season? So, yeah, it's not fair.
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you also wanted to talk about Stroll.
Yeah, I think it was more so just to mention Stroll because I don't know what you saw in your broadcast, but he was just nowhere. I think they mentioned him once off the starting line, and I think he may have gained a position or two, and then all of a sudden he's P20, and that's where he stayed. Just completely, absolutely useless this weekend.
And you brought it up in this episode and last episode about how this is a driver's track. This is a champion's track. The best drivers will succeed here. Mm-hmm. And something that they brought up in the broadcast was he's never been good here. Never been good here.
No.
And
like you compare Yuki going through turns 2 through 6. Some of those maneuvers he makes there are absolutely phenomenal. It just shows how smooth he can be in a car, similar to what we see in China with Yuki. And then you look at Stroll and it's like, what the fuck is this? This looks like a teenager in a go-kart going around Suzuka. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, always in the gravel, always missing the exits, never getting the best exit. Yeah, like
just sloppy.
Exactly.
Looked so sloppy all weekend.
Like we talked about Sargent last year, how he made mistakes no one should be making. Stroll's been doing that for years.
Yeah.
I brought him up to say my bad of the week was where, like, I'm finally bringing it up now, but it's really the bad of the season. Where the hell has Fernando Alonso been? So we know it's bullshit that this team is like, when the team says this car is built around Lance. Yeah, sure. We know it's probably being built around Fernando if they can, if he's giving any valuable information. But he has been he's been worse than the rookies. I would even argue he's probably been the worst driver on the grids thus far. He's never there. Like, he's never in the discussion for anything this year. I wonder if his age is finally getting to him. 45 is.
He's had.
Go on.
But he's had 2 DNFs, hasn't he?
He spun out in Australia.
And got beached, or?
No, he just spun out in the straight line the same way Doohan did. And then he only had a mechanical failure in China. He was non-existent all weekend in Japan.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing that. But yeah, no, you're right. He has been completely just nowhere. I don't even know what the word I was looking for was, but yeah.
And it's about time we ask, like, what's the future of this team? Lance is doing the heavy carrying. And he's useless, like we point out, like in important, big-time tracks. He's going to be nowhere. And Fernando just looks like a ghost, like a shadow of himself. Like, can they really afford another, like, season and a half of this? And I just, like, something's got to give here. Because, like, we talked about Eddie Jordan in the beginning of the last episode. This is his legacy in a lot of ways. He touched this team. This team is here partly because of him. I know it's the Stroll's money. I know it's all reformed. It's been many years on. But it came from there. It came from that grit, from that will, that heart, that spirit. You're shitting on his legacy by continuing this fraud. The media loves Fernando. We know that. But it's been a lie the whole time. And gaslighting example number 1 of saying this team is built around Lance. Lance is going to come on and show us what he's made of one day. No, he's not. This is year 10 or something, or whatever it is of him, year 8. Enough's enough, guys. Make a big change, because you got to start acting like you're the underdog that punches with the big boys, because this is bad now. This is like they're non-existent some weekends, and it's just starting to irritate me.
Yeah. No, and especially in Suzuka, where Alonso is really fond of this track. Like, I can't recall what his record here is, but he's been coming here for his entire career, basically, and loves being in Japan, and just to be absolutely nowhere all weekend. The car doesn't seem happy. You know, Lance has been able to score a couple of points in it, 10, but this week was useless. Alonso's been useless the entire time, you know, with the exception of the mechanical issue he had in China. So we'll see what the rest of the season brings, but this isn't looking good for Aston, because their history has been they start off the season really well and then completely faceplant like 1/3 in. But they started off at the floor. So unless they start digging, they really can't get any lower.
We're about to hit the Arab Grand Prix, which for some reason they're good at. So Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, they might get some points there, and that'll have to carry them through the European Grand Prix and Canada, which they just cannot score points for the life of them. And then they'll be able to go back to Qatar and Abu Dhabi at the end. But I think our prediction of somewhere between 7th and 8th is looking like it's going to be spot on until Newey really gets a handle on this team.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to? Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, which at some point we'll have to see what they do with their driver lineup, because I wouldn't continue to invest in Alonso if this is what we get out of him. Now, unfortunately, that's already been committed to through 26. So let's hope that car is really good in 26. And then Stroll, I mean, I don't know that anybody knows what his contract is, but clearly he's not going anywhere. So
Yeah.
We will see.
This is why you don't listen to the human centipede bullshit that comes out of F1 media, major F1 media, because they've been lying to us about Alonso for a long time, telling us he's still got it, he's still the best, he's still one of the smartest, most smoothest, most elegant drivers. He's 44, about to be 45, guys. Enough. Stop lying to my face. Stop pissing in my face and telling it's rain. They're better off getting rid of him than Stroll at this point. Because, yeah, we know it's a lie with Stroll. But I think people still think Alonso will win a championship with the right car. No. I want to talk about some of my bad here. I have McLaren on there. And yeah, they're winning the constructors by 51 point, or I guess 40 some odd points on Mercedes. Right now, 46 points on Mercedes. Which is, yeah, you shouldn't be saying that this is a bad list. They probably shouldn't be in the bad. However, they would absolutely be dominating the constructors more and running away with the driver's title if they hadn't been holding back Piastri for 2 of the 3 races, which we saw once again, which they had a no-lose situation by letting Oscar go after Max in the last couple laps. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode. And if they really wanted to make Norris happy and Piastri couldn't do it, they could have just switched back at the end. But in typical fashion, I think they got a little scared to piss off Lando, and they hesitated. And I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this without patting myself on the back too much. But like I knew this. I've been talking about how this is coming, that eventually they're going to have to make a decision on who their number one is. And it's clear that they made the wrong one. And I'm thinking that Stella knows that Piastri is the real number one of this team. Because realistically, if they didn't fuck with him, he might have 3 wins. And if you add it, then this is just a conservative estimate. We both agree he should have had 23 more points in Australia. And let's just say he comes second in Japan, right? 26 points. He's at 75 points. He's up on Verstappen already by 14 points. That's two race wins that Max has to overcome in an inferior car. Mm-hmm. So in order to make Lando happy, who clearly is missing something, and I say that because at the end of the race, he goes, yeah, the car didn't have anything more to give. And then a second later, when they interview Oscar, he goes, yeah, this car was mega. I think I had more pace. Who's right here? And why won't you go with the guy who thinks you can give you more instead of the guy who constantly is looking for excuse not to win? I'm starting to think, and this is why I'm putting them in the bad. I think, like I said before already in the last couple of episodes, they're finding ways to lose. They're finding ways to fuck up. But Jacques Villeneuve said something interesting. Jacques Villeneuve, by the way, was the second broadcaster for Sky Sports, and surprisingly, not a bad choice this weekend. He did have some zingers, some really good insight. And he said it looks like McLaren's trying to lose. And I think I know what he's trying to say, but I'll just rephrase it in a way that it made sense to me. It's not that McLaren's trying to lose. I think Stella's being pragmatic. I think he knows Oscar's the real champion. And I think he sees beyond the horizon that in 2026 they're going to be fine, where Red Bull's probably going to fall off. Mercedes is an unknown. Ferrari's an unknown. I'm confident in what we have next year. So I'm going to let Norris and Zach Brown die on the hill. I'm not going to die on the hill of fighting against them. I'm going to show them that they're incapable of winning, even if that means I'm going to lose the drivers this year. Because I think it's pretty obvious they're going to run away with the constructors at this point, unless Yuki really, really goes on a tear. So I think that's what's going on there. Because Jacques kind of right. Like, what were they thinking? Why were they trying to find ways to lose that race that they probably could have easily won? And yeah, not taking anything away from Verstappen. He's still amazing, still an android, still the best. And he deserved that win. But it probably could have been tougher for him. So I don't know what the hell's going on with McLaren. I don't know why they're doing this to Piastri. I don't see him taking this much longer. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think you pretty much nailed it. I would say to your question about who's right, they both are. Lando didn't have the pace. He couldn't keep his tires together this weekend, or at least didn't think he could keep his tires together.
Exactly.
And Piastri had it in the bag. He stuck to the back of Lando and didn't let go and didn't seem to be happy there. Like just wanted to get on with it. And for whatever reason couldn't get past him on merit. Maybe he was told not to, I don't know, but
Yeah,
I think if they had decided to switch positions, I think Piastri would have chased down Verstappen and we would have had a proper fight at the end,
absolutely.
which would have made for an even better race. But like you said, maybe we would have had Piastri with 2 wins up on Max, and this would have been a much better situation for McLaren.
2 wins up on Max, maybe even taking all 3 wins. And you have the constructors and the drivers in your sight. Like you have one hand on them in a sense. I know it's really early, but you are now the clear favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you want to be unless you don't want to piss Lando off? And what does Lando have on you? Why are you coddling this kid who it's now become unanimous? He's kind of a pompous dick and a little arrogant at times, little overrated, but nobody sees that in Piastri. So I don't know.
Yep.
Something's up there.
You're exactly right. I've said it before. I think this season is going to be a very competitive one, and we're going to end up potentially with some surprise winners and some very close fighting for the championships. And McLaren risk losing ground to Mercedes. As ridiculous as that sounds right now,
Ew.
Mercedes has 2 drivers that are just very quietly there. I don't think they have a particularly good car. I don't think their drivers are particularly good. You know my stance on Russell. Antonelli, I think, has some serious skill and could be very good.
One day.
But he's too green. But if you look at the results, they're there. They're 4th and 5th with a good haul of points between them. Yeah, so they're looking at 75 points.
Mm-hmm. In second.
Yeah.
For now.
Let's see how it goes. I mean, if Antonelli keeps this up and George just does what he does and sits in the middle and waits for people to fuck up, I think McLaren has something to really reckon with from a consistency standpoint in Mercedes. And I've said this before, it is possible to win a championship by never winning a race, as long as you're more consistent than your rivals.
Yeah. It's our absolute worst case scary scenario, but it is still a scenario.
But to the point, if McLaren doesn't pull their head out of their ass and figure out that Piastri has it, or at least on weekends where he is on it, that you can't favor Lando, right? Like in Australia, it was pretty clear he had more pace than Lando. In Japan, it was pretty clear he had more pace than Lando.
Mm-hmm.
In China, he beat him outright. There was no question.
Yeah.
But if this happens again in Bahrain, where Piastri is less than a second behind Lando and Lando can't keep up with the guy in front of him, they're asking to lose. And they will be costing themselves the championship by doing that. Because it will lead to fighting between the 2 drivers, and it will lead to DNFs because they run into each other. Eventually, somebody will get pissed off enough that they do something stupid, and it will cost them a whack of points. And that's where the likes of Russell and Antonelli inch up on them. Because instead of being in 5th or 6th, it'll put them in 4th and 5th, or 3rd and 2nd, or,
Yeah. Maybe even a surprise one, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. This is why, for all the flack, like rest in peace, Eddie Jordan, I'm not pissing on your grave, but this is something I think he always got wrong. He always said, why not? Why didn't Michael always have a better driver with him? Why didn't Michael want to compete? It's because at some point, you got to let your best driver take the reins and drag the team over the line. And that goes for constructors and drivers. And I just, I think they're trying to put this square peg in a round hole with Lando when they have a round peg for a round hole in Oscar. And that's why I'm wondering if maybe there's just some internal politics just for this year. And that makes sense, and that gives credence to why they signed Oscar Piastri first, or extended him first. We know you're the guy in the future. Just let's just put this facade to bed this year. Let's let Lando and Zach show that they can't do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My last bad is Red Bull's pit stop. Red Bull as an organization, I've talked about them every episode. And something's going on there. Looks like to me there's some internal power struggle. We talked about last week how after 2 bad races for Lawson, Marco's rushing for an emergency meeting, telling Ralph Schumacher Liam's going to be replaced. It seemed to me that Marco had pumped up Liam so highly and then got proven completely wrong, and was just rushing to save face instead of realizing that this bullshit is costing the team. And I bring that up to say that I also called for last week for Christian Horner's firing, because as much as he may not be the problem, and you made a good point, like he's not the only person in the organization. It's not one person who does everything. I completely agree with you. You're right. But clearly something's wrong with this team. Clearly there's some fear, there's some subconscious sabotage that's emanating throughout the team, because the pit stop crew that used to be so fucking good that it got like 1.8 second pit stops, regularly doing 3+ second pit stops in the last 2 races. And Max once again lost a second in the pits to Lando. And Lando thinks he pushed him on the grass. I don't think so at all. I think Max just took his line and Lando tried to squeeze in. But why was Max in that?
But they corrected that. The drivers corrected that themselves in the interviews at the end. It's all just appealing to the ref.
Exactly. No, I'm not talking shit about Lando. He understood towards the end. I'm just saying I think he was trying not to yield and realized, I fucked up. But Max shouldn't have been in that position. Max should have been out a second before that. What's going on at Red Bull that they can't get this right now? This used to be the team for pit stops. And this just speaks to something going wrong at the top. Like the culture's off. Something's wrong in this team. Something's not right. That now even the pit crew is feeling it. Horner...
Yeah, and I'll give you that.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, all I was just going to add is, Horner leaving is not going to change anything, because, like you said brilliantly last week, Marco's the real problem, but he's never going away. So Horner resigning is just going to be symbolic to say, I'm not going to drag this team down anymore, and hopefully bring out a rebellion and that they push out Marco too, that the board gets some balls and pushes Marco away finally. But yeah, something's wrong, and it's now showing in the pit stops. Almost cost Max a win.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is this goes back to the same thing we've been saying about Red Bull for a while. It's not the same team anymore. They've lost a ton of people in every department to all the different teams. And this is the risk you run when you're a high-performing team at the top. Your people become valuable. And if things start to go bad and the team no longer feels like one, then they start to take those offers from other teams seriously. Now, the FIA has done a lot to slow down the pit stops, and that's intentionally to make sure that things get done properly, that we don't have loose wheel nuts and we don't have mechanics getting run over and all sorts of fun stuff. So that's part of the reason the pit stops have gotten slower. But I think you're right. The crew at Red Bull has become more dysfunctional. And to use a physics term, it's entropy. A system left unattended will continually get more disorderly. So if you have chaos or disorder at the top, right, infighting between management or whatever it is, management leaving or moving it around, it will trickle down to the rest of the team, and the impact will get worse the further down it goes. And I think that's part of what we saw and part of what you're talking about. At the same time, I wouldn't I wouldn't put that all on the pit crew. I think it was a bit ridiculous that both Verstappen and Lando were in the pits at the same time. So the Max side of it wouldn't have changed. He probably still would have lost time to Lando regardless, but Lando should have been in a lap later. There was absolutely no reason for them to be in the pits at the same time. It didn't make any sense. That was a messed up strategy call from McLaren, and I think ultimately that probably cost them the race.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not blaming the Red Bull pit crew. I'm blaming the situation around them. I'm just saying when the culture is winning, like when they were winning in 2022, 23, 24, they were untouchable with their pit stops. Or I guess not so much 2024. I'm saying the crew is acting based on what's around them. That's not their fault. There's like a fear, there's something emanating around them. So I'm not giving direct blame to them. Shit like this happens. I'm just saying it's something that didn't normally happen at Red Bull. Through hell or high water, they always had great pit stops because they had great management. They had great people in great positions. That's all gone. I think they're feeling the blowback of that. Yeah. Not blaming them directly. And
no, and that's what I was talking about with entropy. So it all just continues to crumble. It starts at the top and it works its way down and it turns into chaos.
Yeah. I think we're going to end it there unless you have any other bad you want to talk about today.
No, I think that's it for me.
All right. Yeah. Great race once again. I'm loving F1 in 2025. And I'm excited to see what happens in Bahrain, which isn't normally a great race, but, you know, the way this season's going, they'll probably make it. They'll find a way to make it a great race.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe a surprise at the last minute they'll change it to the Sakir circuit, the outer ring.
Wouldn't that be nice? And
make for a whole lot of laps.
And Alpine will magically sign Sergio Perez for one race. Try that again.
Sure. Or, just put Franco in because we all know that that's going to happen in Miami.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right, buddy. It's a pleasure talking to you as always.
All right.
You have yourself a good night. And good night, everybody. F1 Philosophy at YouTube. Keep liking our shorts and our videos. And you can get us exclusively at Spotify as well. All right. Good night.
Good night, everyone.